Just 10 days ago, state leaders reported Georgia's first cases of coronavirus. Today, its first death.
It is with great sadness that we have to report the state's first patient death from COVID-19.
Governor Brian Kemp is issuing a call to action.
If you feel that it is prudent, you should consider closing daycares, schools, or school districts.
And school districts are listening.
I am announcing the closing of all Fulton County schools and district offices to begin tonight.
What kind of indications are you getting as to how long this might last if we all do the right thing and keep that social distance?
Well, I don't really know that I can answer that question. We're going to take this one day at a time. If we get where we feel like we can answer that, we'll try to be transparent with people.
Just one day after the World Health Organization declared the coronavirus a pandemic, people nationwide flocked to big box retailers to stockpile toilet paper, can't find it anywhere, water, and hand sanitizer, to name a few.
That includes right here in Atlanta. Take a look at the long lines outside an Atlanta area Costco. This is at the perimeter location, but it's really happening everywhere. In some cities, lines are so long, they're overflowing in the parking lots. Back here in Georgia, in Hiram, there was even a fight that broke out at a Sam's Club. We'll show you a look at that video coming up on News Edge at 11. If you plan on shopping soon, Governor Brian Kemp had this advice. He said it's important to keep the needs of other people in mind, too.
I think people that are in the grocery store right now, I don't think you need to buy every loaf of bread on the shelf. Save one for your neighbor.
Nationwide, there are more than 7,000 people who have been infected with coronavirus. Every state and the District of Columbia has cases. The most cases, New York, with nearly 2,500 cases. And second is Washington, with just over 1,000 cases up here. With more than 8,000 deaths, global cases have reached more than 200,000. So far, according to Johns Hopkins University, more than 82,000 people have recovered from the virus worldwide. And breaking tonight, China's health ministry says Wuhan, the original epicenter of COVID-19, has reported no new cases today for the very first time.
Advocates against domestic violence say isolation during the COVID-19 outbreak can increase the risk of violence in households. Now, Fox 5's Alex Whitler joins us now live tonight from Atlanta Police Headquarters. Alex, what did those advocates tell you?
Well, Russ, they're saying there's two main triggers for violence. They're saying it's not just isolation, but it's also stress.
Think about it. That recommendation from the CDC to stay 6 feet apart from the next individual, well, law enforcement officers can't maintain that if they run into a suspect, someone they may have to wrestle with to get them to comply.
All units be advised.
Law enforcement, it's definitely a hands-on job. The social distancing advice cannot always be put into practice.
COVID-19 has no boundaries, of course, and that's why local jails are constantly working to make sure the virus doesn't spread inside their facilities. Fox 5's Brian Hill spent today at the Fulton County Jail learning how they plan to keep inmates and employees safe. Brian, one thing they're doing is releasing some people early, right?
That's right. So to help with overcrowding, the sheriff's office says inmates with release dates are being considered. So far, they have already let 15 people go. However, they did say their main focus right now is making sure this virus does not get inside.
As we told you earlier this hour, Atlanta's mayor signed an executive order limiting restaurants and temporarily closing bars in an effort to limit the spread of the coronavirus. But the Georgia Restaurant Association says even before that order, a business had been so bad for so many Atlanta establishments this past month that some 70% of them had already shut down. And now, with the forced closure of so many venues at midnight, some industry workers tell us they are already feeling the financial impact of being out of work.
I'm a bartender. I work for tips. So with my restaurant being shuttered, I have no tips coming in.
Today, I will be issuing an executive order requiring the Department of Public Health to require certain individuals with an increased risk of complications from COVID-19 to isolate, quarantine, or shelter in place.
A statewide shelter-in-place order is now in effect for all groups at risk, but there are new restrictions that apply to every Georgian, at risk or not. Plus, we're taking a look at where Georgia stands in comparison to the rest of the nation.
I want to just thank the American people for what they've been through and what they're doing. Our country will be stronger than ever before. and we fully anticipate that, and it won't be that long.
But Americans are wondering, how long will this last? Health experts say it depends on how seriously people listen to that message to stay at home. Even world leaders believe this pandemic depends on the people.
We can change the trajectory of this pandemic.
Here in Georgia, confirmed cases have reached 800 as leaders do their very best to keep that number down. Good evening. I'm Courtney Bryant.
And I'm Russ Spencer. Thanks for joining us tonight. We begin tonight with what Governor Kemp is doing to slow the spread of COVID-19 in our state. He issued some new mandates for businesses. Fox 5's Denise Dillon is live outside the state capitol tonight. And Denise, the governor stopped short of declaring a statewide shelter in place, but we're learning Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms just made a major announcement.
Yes, just moments ago, the mayor said that there will be a citywide shelter in place. That is for all Atlanta residents.
This should not be a time for political agendas, but rather one for focusing solely and squarely on the needs of the American people.
And yet the nation's lawmakers are struggling to pass a stimulus package to help Americans get through this crisis.
It's time of uncertainties. Nothing like this never happened in our lifetime, so we are just keeping positive and prepared.
Despite the uncertainty, local businesses are helping their own. And one truck driver says you don't have to worry when you see empty grocery store shelves.
We're not going to run out of food.
How about that? An incredible sound from Midtown tonight. Cheers and clapping filled the air at 8 o'clock tonight. It's happening every night, in fact. So who's the applause for? Well, it's a way of saying thank you to first responders and medical staff who are on the front lines of this COVID-19 pandemic. A small gesture, but a great one. As COVID-19 continues to spread, Hartsfield-Jackson has seen fewer travelers and more cancellations. And as a result, the airport's general manager says Hartsfield-Jackson is, quote, burning cash. How long can the airport afford to stay open? Well, Fox 5's Morse Diggs has that story.
Less than one half of the jets that normally fly from Hartsfield-Jackson Airport are taking off right now. Business is way down.
We're playing it day by day.
It is the impact of COVID-19 on air travel all over the country. Atlanta's airport is, quote, burning cash, unquote, from lost revenues.
We begin tonight with big news that will impact millions of Americans. President Trump signed a more than $2 trillion deal to fight the COVID-19 pandemic and send economic relief to workers and businesses. Good evening. I'm Russ Spencer. Thanks for joining us tonight. This is the largest stimulus plan in the nation's history, and it includes checks for most Americans.
The average family of four will receive a direct payment of some $3,400. It also covers payroll for small businesses across the country for a period of several months.
It will also send unprecedented billions to states, local governments, and the nation's overwhelmed healthcare system. Now, while economic relief is on the way, many are wondering when this pandemic will end. One step in the right direction is developing a vaccine, and we're learning from Vice President Mike Pence that Emory University is in the middle of that effort.
Emory University in Atlanta today began enrolling volunteers in a phase 1 clinical trial of another possible vaccine for the coronavirus.
Well, millions of students are at home during the COVID-19 pandemic. There are concerns that some children could fall behind in schoolwork because of a digital divide. That's why school districts and governments nationwide are racing to give students without internet a chance to keep up.
Joanna Malcolm works at a non-emergency surgery center in Athens, which isn't operating right now due to the demand for COVID-19 care. After getting back from New York, she says she's concerned people don't realize how serious this could get here. She says what she saw there was like a war zone.
I feared for my life. I feared for my life. And I prayed about it, and I said, Lord, if you want me to stay, I'm going to stay. But I truly feared for my life.
Most of us think of Helen as that quaint town in the mountains with a German flair. But now, in the middle of this coronavirus pandemic, this German town is a ghost town.
We're a tourist town. You got the beautiful mountains, and you got the Chattahoochee River, and hunt and fish. That's why I live here, so that I can do those things. And we love to have the visitors here. That's how we keep the city going.
Habersham County Chairman Stacey Hall and leaders in 11 other North Georgia counties all sent a letter to Governor Brian Kemp asking him to close the state parks to help stop the spread of COVID-19. The governor's shelter-in-place order he issued last week allowed parks to stay open. The county leaders also said the influx of people is having a detrimental effect on resources, including food and fuel.
Our parks are one of our greatest assets. Let's hit the pause button for a few weeks while we're in this state of emergency and we've got this executive order.
And Chairman Hall wanted to make it clear that he supports the governor and thinks he's doing a good job, but he needs to know what is happening in North Georgia. I asked the governor's office for a response to that letter. They told me that they've received it, they're reviewing it, and they will continue to monitor the situation.
Cobb County's elections officials sending out an SOS, saying thousands of voters are flooding their offices with absentee ballots. They posted this video on YouTube saying they're inundated.
They're coming in about 4 or 5 every minute. And then processing those, it takes a good 5 or 10 minutes to process each application.
All over the state, county elections officials have been confronted with the prospect of an overwhelming number of ballots and applications as voters prepare to avoid human contact at the polls. Officials have decided to push back the state's primary election again. It's now set for June the 9th. Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger made the decision after Governor Brian Kemp extended the public health emergency until next month.
Here at Fox 5, we continue to practice social distancing. That's why I am at a location outside our news station.
And although our newscast may look a little different, we're still here together to give you the latest information.
This is the control center for about 600 members of the National Guard. You can see each of those icons on the map is a team of soldiers working in our communities to keep families safe.
This is an overview of our quote-unquote battlefield.
It's a war room against the enemy every Georgian is fighting.
I know that the journey ahead is going to be a long one. We must remain laser focused on defeating this virus and keeping our citizens safe.
Governor Brian Kemp announced his plans to partially reopen Georgia as the state continues to battle COVID-19. He says this does not mean things will be returning to normal.
And as cases in Georgia surpass 19,000, we're hearing from one of the survivors, a teenager we first introduced you to last week, now out of the hospital tonight. But we begin first with Governor Kemp's decision to reopen parts of the state. Good evening. I'm Courtney Bryant.
And I'm Russ Spencer. Current White House criteria include 3 phases to reopen, and Governor Kemp says he believes Georgia is on track to meet the first phase. Specifically, he says we have adequate testing, hospital capacity, and contact tracing of COVID-19.
Kemp says the state is partnering with the Georgia health system to, quote, double down on testing capacity. The governor says his decision to reopen parts of the state was a thoughtful one.
In the same way that we carefully closed businesses and urged operations to end to mitigate the virus spread, today we are announcing plans to incrementally and safely reopen sectors of our economy.
A number of businesses can reopen this Friday. That includes some you see on your screen: gyms, fitness centers, bowling alleys, beauty shops and salons, tattoo parlors, and more.
And that's not all. 1 week from today, next Monday, restaurants and movie theaters can also reopen. Governor Kemp says more details on restrictions for these businesses will be announced later this week. The governor also says just because these businesses are open again doesn't mean things will go back to normal.
Now, the next point is a very important one. The entities which I'm reopening are not reopening as business as usual.
Governor Kemp says his decision to begin reopening some businesses does not mean just handing the keys right back to them. He says it's a measured approach.
Fox News anchor Martha McCallum pressed him on that issue tonight, asking why he chose to open businesses that require close contact.
Can you explain why you would start with those kinds of businesses on day one?
Well, those are the ones who are closed. The other businesses in Georgia are still currently opening under the order that I have now.
and we're coming down. I think that's what a lot of people don't understand. But you also have to give that fitness owner or that owner in a hair salon the the ability to be able to be a partner in this fight that we're in. They're going to have to follow the strict guidelines.
In less than 48 hours, Georgia is set to begin reopening during the COVID-19 pandemic. Did Governor Brian Kemp make that move too soon?
I told the governor of Georgia, Brian Kemp, that I disagree strongly.
President Trump now appears to think so. Tonight, we're hearing both sides, the defense of the governor's decision and the serious backlash.
And whether you agree with his decision or not, it is moving forward. That's why the Georgia Restaurant Association is preparing to reopen Monday with a task force of its own. I want to talk a little bit about the coronavirus pandemic and just this world we are living in now. Is this a sign of things to come for November?
I think it could be, and I think a lot of people will contemplate whether or not they want to even try to head to the polls in November, whether the coronavirus is kind of making its second wave or not, because who wants to wait in line for that long and then really question whether your vote will count and will it be counted. So I think the social distancing, I think, the cleaning of the machines I saw was happening, a lot of sanitizing, it was holding up the lines. So I think it could be a sign of things to come, and if we can't get the experienced poll workers back at the precincts, that could be a huge problem.
Here in Fulton County, officials say the demand for more tests is overwhelming testing sites and labs.
They are having difficulty just keeping up with the volume of tests.
Because of that increased volume of tests, Fulton County's health director, Dr. Lynn Paxton, says some people are now getting their results 9 days later.
And our investigators can kick into gear and call the people. Ideally, we'd be doing that within a day or so.
This evening, researchers at Emory University reported anxiously awaited findings from phase 1 of the first human trial for a vaccine. Fox 5 anchor Christine Spiro joins us now. And Christine, these results are encouraging to say the least.
Yeah, that's right, Courtney. Scientists say after getting the shot, patients produced antibodies to fight coronavirus. Now the question is whether it will protect against infection and how long those antibodies last.
With just weeks before millions of students are set to begin school, we're hearing from the state superintendent. He says the Georgia Department of Education has issued guidance to all school districts.
State Superintendent Richard Woods says ultimately it is his goal to support each district's decision in how they reopen.
The first day of school will be the first day of school. You can expect hiccups. You can expect challenges. But I guarantee you your kids will be safe, your teachers will be safe.
The battle does intensify tonight between Governor Kemp and Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms. The two are going head-to-head in a pandemic power struggle. The governor just filed to withdraw a lawsuit against the city and the mayor over her COVID-19 regulations and her mask mandate. He said Mayor Bottoms agreed to abandon Atlanta's phase 1 rollback plan. That included recommendations for some businesses to close, but simply put, the mayor says the governor is lying and that she never agreed to that. Tonight, the governor tweeted about the ongoing saga. He wrote, "It's hard enough for small business owners to make ends meet during this pandemic. It's even harder when mayors are threatening to close you down or issue massive fines if you don't play by their rules." We will continue to follow the clash between those two leaders.
The Clark County School District has a tentative 3-phase plan to get students back in the classroom for face-to-face learning. But what's not clear right now is when exactly they can take that first step.
We knew it was going to be a problem, and I think you've seen that in the case numbers almost exactly to the day of move-in.
Will Leach says the case numbers are concerning in Clark County. The numbers started to go up after UGA students returned to campus.
Breaking tonight, the FDA approves a COVID-19 vaccine for use here in the United States. The news comes as more than 15.8 million Americans have tested positive for the virus, which has now killed nearly 300,000. That is where we begin tonight. The approval clears the way for millions of doses of the Pfizer vaccine to start shipping.
And so the question is, when could the vaccine arrive and how long is all of this going to take? The Fox Medical Team's Beth Galvin joins us live now with answers to some of your questions. And Beth, I guess the biggest question is, where is this vaccine sitting right now?
So
So, Tom and Courtney, the vaccine is right now at Pfizer's manufacturing plant in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and it is set to ship. We're told 2.9 million doses of the vaccine are ready to go